Good morning, everyone. I am Troy Schlicker with Reserve Realty here for the Austin Spotlight. I get the chance to interview Ari. He is a commercial real estate investor, developer, wears a lot of hats, has a lot of great stuff. And with everything that's been going on in the real estate market today, in the last couple of months here in Austin and nationwide, I thought he'd be a great person to bring on and get some of his insights. So Ari, welcome. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. So why don't you, to get started, why don't you kind of give us a little bit of like your origin story, what's your background and how you kind of got into being in real estate?
Yeah, look, I've always been enamored by beautiful buildings. Since I was a little kid, I remember, kind of walking through downtown area. I'm actually a native Austinite. I was born at Seton Hospital, one of the unicorns, I guess.
I said yes, very much so. Yeah,
kind of still born and raised here, and but I kind of grew up and down the I-35 corridor. Went to high school, and middle school in Dallas, and went to law school in St. Mary's down in San Antonio. So obviously spent many years on Wall Street, but I remember being a kid looking at the big buildings in Dallas and just being enamored by them. And I was an English major in undergrad at Texas A&M. So, for me, it was very much, there's an artistic element about beautiful architecture and what that means, and kind of the philosophy around that, in addition to just loving to build things, create them, seeing things, come out of nothing. And especially in kind of the multifamily housing arena of, building homes, places where people live and understanding their living space. And, my wife is our, creative director. My sister-in-law is our chief operating officer. My chief of staff is my friend for 30 years. Our head of development is my friend for 30 years. So we're very much a family, family business in all respects. But this was something I knew that I'd do for many years. When I was in law school, I started my first real estate investment company with a $3,000 loan from one of my friend's fathers from college, and the rest of my scholarship money, and partnered with a local developer to build little single family homes on Canyon Lake. We did 1, we did 2, 3, and then 2007, 2008 happened. And, I was able to walk away with a nice crispy hat, good credit, paying back our investors, but not much more after that. And that took me to Wall Street, and was fortunate to work with some of the greatest minds in this industry, because my wrestling coach growing up, and I was by no means a good wrestler. The same guy that was in my weight class, who's one of my best friends, since we were kids, was a 7-time national champion. So he just pretty much beat me up every day, for about 10 years. But our wrestling coach, his cousin, was the head of Credit Suisse's conduit lending business. And after law school, moved to New York, and I was very fortunate to meet a lot of great folks. Got my experience, cut my teeth, met the banks, learned how the acquisitions, look how this stuff worked. And after my wife and I had number 2, we wanted to figure out where we were going to raise our family, and we saw the writing on the wall. For here in Austin, after 2013, when Google Fiber used Austin as the beta case to build $1 billion in hardware, really laid the framework for what we see, Austin 7 years later, of having 1,000 up, 1,000 down. It was literally that infrastructure and that inflection moment that led to what this growth is, that now allows Facebook to have the second largest office in the world here, the Google second largest office, Tesla's new Gigafactory, this little company that everybody forgets about called Dell, that's headquartered in Round Rock, Amazon's largest acquisition to date, and Whole Foods, headquartered and founded in Austin. And, they paid, I think, 13.2 billion.
Yep.
And then Apple's 140-acre campus. But the impetus of all that was, when Google Fiber happened, and kind of told my wife I was the Texas guy in New York. And so I was like, great place to raise our kids. And it worked out as a great marriage of, kind of business and family.
Very nice. So a wrestler, you don't realize when you're down in Texas, the only sport you think guys are allowed to play is football. So it's interesting that you got to do the wrestling side of things from that standpoint.
Yeah, my dad was, kind of wrestled in middle school and high school. And my father was an Iranian immigrant that was studying here at UT in St. Edwards before the Iranian Revolution. And in Iran, wrestling is a
big sport,
big sport. And so for him, it was something that he really loved. And we watched the Olympics, and and it's something that we kind of bonded together on. And yeah, and it was really, really cool. My mom still lives, here in the Austin area. Dad's there in Dallas, and so now we have 3 beautiful kids, and they're starting to learn boxing and learn some of that stuff. And maybe my middle son will put him in wrestling.
We'll join the wrestling shoes.
Not so sure I want to put him in football with all the concussions and all that kind of stuff, but he loves soccer. His aunt, who's our COO that I mentioned, is a soccer fanatic and love the sport. We actually at Rastegar sponsor FC Westlake with Adidas. We're the exclusive sponsors for FC Westlake K through 12. So if you see our Rastegar logo on those jerseys, it was a sport that it's very unifying, and it's a world sport, crosses boundaries, crosses language, and all the things that we believe in at Rastegar. So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, so you say you made it through 2007, 2008 with your credit intact, which, since I was in the mortgage world at that point in time, is a feat, because not everyone was able to do that, unfortunately.
We were very fortunate. I had a great partner. He was a seasoned vet, and he had the liquidity, and it was a win-win, and it was a great experience. And I promised myself that the next time it happened, we'd be ready to capitalize on it, and that's exactly what we're doing. So it took 10 years. I thought it would take a couple, but it took 10. But we're in a good spot.
Yes. Again, as troubling and as frustrating as some of the things that we're going through now are, we do have to remember that we were on the longest economic growth period in history, and so that's not going to last forever. So you have to expect that at some point in time we're going to have a correction.
And that's not a bad thing. And I think a lot of times we look at that, and we live in, it's a cyclical economy, right? And we don't need to get into the nuances of how the short-term, long-term debt markets work. If you ever are interested in it, Ray Dalio, kind of the king of hedge funds, and a beautiful man all around, is, really advocated for what he calls radical transparency. And he wrote a book called Principles a couple years ago that he actually issued on his website for free about 7 years ago, just explaining the systems and the processes around how they built Bridgewater. He's an advocate of transcendental meditation, which, I'm a big advocate for as well. But he has a video on YouTube called "How the Economic." Oh my God, man after my own heart. Not that specific book, but yes. That's part 2. Principles came out first, but that's part 2. Absolutely. Yeah. So a man after my own heart. Yeah. So both of you. And so Ray has a great video on YouTube. It's about 30 minutes long. It's kind of animated, and it's called "How the Economic Machine Works." And it is absolutely brilliant. So if anybody has ever, been embarrassed or whatever to understand, what is an economy? How does that work? What's the short-term debt cycle? What's the long-term debt cycle? What's a market? What's the stock market? He makes it so unbelievably simple, and it's so entertaining. It takes about 25, 30 minutes, but you can find it on YouTube for free. And I highly recommend, anybody that's ever interested in understanding what's going on. But he explains how markets go up, they come down. As a nature, when you're in a capitalistic society, you have a Federal Reserve, you have short-term interest rates, and your interest rate environment, he explains it very easily how that works. So there's an old saying on Wall Street that, that has always stuck with me, is that bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. And so he explains he was always, as long as it's not moving, that's the real problem. So
it's always going one direction or the other.
That's right.
So obviously we're back into another recession period for you now in your second life in the real estate investment world. What are some things you've been seeing going on right now, and what are some things you guys are doing as a company to try to move forward for when, for while we're in this period, but also for when we get to the end of the tunnel from that standpoint?
Well, look, during COVID, we were one of the most active buyers in Austin. So a simple Google search of what we did, we bought, I don't know the exact number, to be honest, but I want to say at least 5 or 6 properties at the height of COVID. We have a large insurance company that was our JV partner, to acquire them, that partnered with us to buy a bunch of apartment complexes. We focus mostly around vintage multifamily, which is effectively, very well located, under 100 door, 30-year plus product, that we can do all the deferred maintenance, bring in Class A amenities on the inside, and really create value. So we were extremely active during that time. And I believe this to be, the greatest buying opportunity, maybe ever. Okay.
Sure.
Interest rates, and that's a function of several different factors. Interest rates have
Because
never been lower. The Fed recently came out, rates are going to stay low until 2023, which with all the money that's been used to stimulate the economy, which, I think under the situation, I think they did the best that they could.
Sure.
To make those decisions. But
one quick question about interest rates specifically. So again, having been in the mortgage world and the real estate world, I do have a concern because again, historically we should be at 6-7%, right? That's, again, we're very not short-sighted, but we all have kind of short-term memories. Like the fact that we're at 3% now, when we got up to 5%.
Jimmy Carter, they were at 18%.
Yes, exactly. And so, I remember back in the day as a mortgage loan officer, prior to 2007, when there was some of that uncertainty happening, rates spiked all the way up to 6.5%. And I had clients getting pre-approved for mortgages who were like, I would never pay that kind of interest rate. And it's like, this is what the rate is. This isn't like me saying you're a poor client and stuff. And so I do wonder, not so much from an affordability, because it will affect affordability when rates start to go up as well, but just from a mindset of that, we're used to that, go buy it on sale, go get it on sale. And so right now everything's on sale from an interest rate perspective. Once stuff isn't on sale.
Yes and no. I mean, you have to look at these things from several different vantage points. Okay. If you look at cap rates as an example, right, the way cap rates look and, how we value, commercial real estate acquisitions, historically, and I have a big problem with that word right now because of the advent of AI, and we are very data driven as a firm, and we actually see ourselves as a technology company more as a real estate company. Everything that we're building is around new technology, using systems and processes to take a very antiquated business and use technology and systems to create more efficiencies. And, one of my old partners would say, if you're ever going to say anything good about yourself, you have to say, if I do say so myself. So if there's anything that we do well, if I do say so myself, is using technology and data to make better decisions. Okay. And so I bring that up because historical analysis, I don't want to say that it's obsolete, because Mark Twain says it best that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. Okay. But because of AI, because of electronic trading, because of all these other variables that have been introduced, the way that we understand historical data must be looked at from a different vantage point. It's not as relevant or as indicative of the future as it once was. Are there still things to be learned? No question, but not nearly with the profundity that even 5 years ago existed. And information technology grows exponentially and accelerates exponentially. So the longer that we get into this new cycle and the more that these technological advancements happen, the less historical data will be relevant to what is going on today. So we need to be forward thinking in how we stress test and how we look at the analysis and start looking at different variables than we really had in the past. But using the extreme example under Carter, when rates were at 15, 16, 17%, people made a ton of money. I mean, there's tons and tons of money being made, so there's always a way to make money in these environments. And just because interest rates are low doesn't mean you're buying a good deal. So what I'm actually seeing is a lot of people, making kind of disfavorable investments just because rates are low. And it's the equivalent of buying in the opportunity zone, which has become this big buzzword. And we own a bunch of stuff in the opportunity zone. We have 50 acres, near Tesla's new gigafactory, close to Chanel and by the airport. But you don't make an investment decision based upon taxes. The same way as you don't make an investment decision just based on interest rates. It is a variable. It's something that you look at. It's something that is important. But if you're doing a deal that it only works at 3%, but doesn't work at 4%, you probably shouldn't be doing that deal anyway.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So, so I think there's other things that need to be factored in, but more importantly, when rates are low like this, you need to be more stringent in your underwriting, more stringent in your due diligence practices, because it's almost an attractive nuisance. You say, oh, interest rates are shit. Let me refinance my house, or let me pull some equity out. Let me, and you start making these gut decisions instead of really focusing on the fundamentals where the objective should always be, in my opinion.
Very true. Yeah. What are you seeing? So obviously you guys do mention the kind of the legacy multifamily types of properties with the shelter in place and the ability to work from home, a lot of the big tech companies are kind of allowing their people to work from home for the next year. Some of them have said indefinitely. What kind of impact do you think that will have here in Austin? Right, Google is building a huge
1.2
commercial
million.
space. Yeah, huge commercial space downtown, right next to the library there, where now are people going to even have to go to that location? Are people even going to have to move to Austin to work for Google for those jobs and stuff? How do you see that impacting where things are?
Look, you got to put things in perspective again. We have to look, what timeline are we talking about? Okay, right? Are we talking about a 6 month, a 3 month, a 5 year, right? And so it depends on the vantage point that you're looking at. First and foremost, I saw Simon Sinek, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, the other day. And those of you that don't know Simon, he's the why guy. And that's the question. He's always, why are you doing these things? Very great forward thinker. And, he brought up some interesting points, is that as humans, we are tribal beings. Okay. And there's something about human connectivity, of being in the same room together, whiteboarding things, talking, collaborating, that is irreplaceable with technology. Obviously, with the conveniences of the Zooms and these things, is there a place for it? No question. Okay. There's absolutely no question. It's an invaluable resource that is just a part. But the tribal mechanisms and the human nature of how we brainstorm, and having 3 minds together, creating, the power of 5 minds, and those things that happen, then going to lunch afterwards and breaking bread, and all these other, these communal things that make us human, are what forward innovation. Okay. There are some jobs, such as coders, right? So taking Google as an example is an extreme example, because if you're a coder and all day long you have no human interaction and you're sitting there typing on a computer, yeah, that could definitely be a job where, you don't need to be in the office and you can do that. But most industries that require, certainly in the service business, certainly in sales, realtor, things that involve human interaction as a nature of their business, certainly all sales, in some regard, it's unsustainable. To do it as a precautionary matter, that makes sense. But so people are talking about, is this the end of office and this, that, and the other? No. Jamie Dimon, who I have a lot of respect for, was talking the other day that all their data shows that working from home productivity has plummeted. Period. End of story. It's plummeted. There's no way around it. But like I said, there are certain sectors and certain job types that it could be sustainable, that could make some sense. But when you look at it at a grander scale, I don't think it works, and I don't think it brings the fulfillment and the joy and the energy of working with your colleagues and all the things that that kind of go along with that. Certainly for children, we're we have 3 young children, and kids not being in school and not collaborating. I read this unbelievable study the other day. I believe it was a Harvard study. Don't quote me on that, but a very reputable source pointed out that 80% of what children learn between the ages of 5, so kind of kindergarten to 5th grade, is learned on the playground.
Sure.
So the social
aspect,
morality of how you deal, share my ball, or, you can go, it's your turn, or, don't hit him, those things that are being learned in tribal settings. And right now, we're lacking that. And so the office space is an example. People are like, office is over. Well, people forget that in the 80s and the 90s, the largest office tenant in the world as a demographic were law firms. Okay. Well, because they had libraries, they needed floors and floors and floors of libraries. When that digitized, they didn't need all that space. So there's this huge vacancy that existed. But, oh my God, we're never going to fill those space up again. 5-6 years later, New York is at 97% occupancy, and so, or retail is dead. Well, then Amazon, the largest e-commerce company in the world, buys a brick and mortar location, buys Whole Foods, 13 billion, the biggest check they ever wrote. And so you have this massive overcorrection, and then it starts coming back to reality. That's where we are, right? Yeah. And you're in this place where we're being very reactionary, which, for safety and precaution, I don't disagree with it, but as over time, you'll see innovation and a reinvention of what those things are. So when big box retailers like Sears started to go bankrupt, folks like us went in and converted it into self-storage. And I think,
Right.
or, if there's vacancy in office, you might see that converted into multifamily. The point is, it'll evolve into something better. And COVID has basically accelerated trends that you're already seeing. People, leaving New York, leaving California, that was already happening. They just threw gasoline on it.
Exactly. No, I remember hearing that one of the executives for CBRE talk about the fact that, so that they think that, yes, obviously this will change kind of how office space may be used, but you may just see, again, it's not that they will see a drastic reduction in space necessarily needed. In some cases, they'll have fewer people go to an office, but those people need more room if you're trying to stay, more socially distanced and stuff too.
I think that's accurate. And I think, look, are there going to be mechanisms like in our own office? We have, masks and hand sanitizers, and, at our front desk, we put up the fiberglass, and there's these post-COVID changes that you're putting that create more safety, more sanitization, which I'm all for. We're designing a building right now in-house on East 8th. We own the hard corner of East 8th and I-35 right next to that shell, which most of y'all know across the police station. And with TxDOT passing the $7.5 billion grant to expand the highways and building the parks and all the beautiful things that are going on in that area, we've started to ask different questions like, okay, we're designing this building in a post-COVID world. It's a small boutique building. It'll be about 26,000 square feet, 2 stories. We're putting staircases outside. We're making larger elevators. We're doing things that are more touchless. And so I think those evolutions are going to happen, and those are here to stay. But people working from home as a majority is unsustainable. It's just unsustainable. And again, I'm not a market timer. I'm not a crystal ball kind of guy. I believe in the greatness of the American economy. Not to be cheesy, that I don't know if the markets are going to go up in 2 years, but if you look at it in 20, they're going to go up. In 30, definitely, right? And same thing with when are people going to go back to work? I don't know. I mean, is the vaccine going to work? Is there going to be a second wave? Is there going to be, but eventually these things will get worked out because the numbers are very clear. This is not the Spanish flu where, 50 million people were coughing up blood and dying in the streets, God rest their souls. This is a horrific thing that's caused a lot of trouble. A lot of families have lost loved ones, but
we will get through it.
But we will get through it, and people say, oh, it's not as bad. It's like the flu. Well, the flu's pretty nasty. The flu kills people.
Yes, it does as well.
The flu kills people. So it's not like, so it's something, but now that the data is in, it's not what I think people thought it was, but that doesn't mean that the reactions and the things that they did were wrong. I think, when you don't know,
you'd
choices. Yep. And especially Austin has done a tremendous job. I give the mayor all the credit in the world for canceling South by Southwest when he did. We had 100 countries, confirmed, 200,000 people coming in, and he made that decision to lose $350 million of revenue for a city, which took a lot of, guts.
Yes.
I could say that a little differently, which was a great decision. And it was the right one. So I think our city has done a tremendous job of dealing with this. And compared to other, top 10 cities, and you'll find this funny, Austin just became the 10th largest city in the United States, ironically enough, passing San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley.
Yep.
So we're watching these trends, kind of come, and it's certainly an interesting time, but I want to be very clear. There is money to be made. There is absolute opportunity. Like we have never seen, better deal flow, more accretive financing, and more opportunity to do something great. So we are really excited. Are we walking through mud like everybody else is? Are we slugging through it? Is there, dealing with the kids at home and all the, the things that are going on? Yes. But, Edison would say, people miss opportunity because opportunity shows up in overalls. So, we're willing to do the work, but, I want to be very clear that this is a fantastic time for growth and expansion.
Cool. We had a couple of questions. One, or I just wanted to, and we kind of touched on this when we were talking about interest rates too, but just kind of asking if you see yourself capitalizing on the low rates to acquire more properties, and kind of what you were talking about is, paraphrasing, that really the low rates aren't, like, they may be a catalyst for some extra finance and stuff in the wheel of those situations, but that's not really going to be the primary catalyst for you guys to do more properties. You'll probably do more properties now because there's more opportunity, because when there's turbulence in the market, there's just more opportunity and more instances to try to capitalize on that.
Sure. No, and to the point of the question is, I think, first of all, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have done an extraordinary job during COVID. I mean, at the height of COVID, Fannie did 14 billion of originations in 1 week. Okay. And so very much the market on the multifamily side was moving. And so with agencies, I think the agency financing opportunity, meaning Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, has never been more accretive. I mean, they are doing such a tremendous job of helping move this market. And we are absolutely looking at agency financing more than we ever have. I mean, there was other, different mechanisms that were out there that were accretive, but we are very focused on agency financing. They're long-term, locking in these interest rates, be able to increase cash flows. Agency right now is absolutely a place you should be looking at, for as multifamily investors. And you always should be kind of looking at agency as whether you did a bridge to be able to complete your value add and move into agency. But now there's opportunities where the rates are and the opportunities to go straight into agency, where before you would have used a bridge mechanism before doing that. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Nice. So probably want to talk about a little bit. We obviously mentioned it based on the fact that Austin just passed San Jose for the 10th largest city in the country. But anyone who's lived here a long time, you obviously been here your entire life. I've been here 15 years. You tend to notice that we get a lot of Californians specifically, but a lot of people from both coasts that move to Austin and Texas. And we're seeing that as well kind of increase over the last few months with everything that's been going on. What are you seeing for your projections going forward? I mean, again, me personally, I don't see that slowing down anytime soon between the cost of living, the additional space that people can get to.
It's all going to increase. New York City this time last year had 5,600 vacancies of apartments. It's 25,000. Yeah. California, over 1 million people left California last year. 150,000 of them just came to Texas. Okay. And the joke I made the other day on Yahoo Finance on Final Round was California and New York are the land of the flea, and Texas is the land of the free.
Yeah.
Okay. And same goes for Florida. All the reasons people want to be in Florida. And Nashville. Nashville's done a tremendous job. And the reason why people are going to Nashville, going to Raleigh, going to Phoenix, going to Florida, going to Texas, it's for the same reason. Jobs. Look, fair weather climate. And so if people are going to be working from home, they want more space and they need employment. And all the reasons to be in the Californias and the New Yorks, and look, I spent many years in New York. It's one of my favorite cities in the world, and LA is where my wife was born. My sister-in-law were born. I've, 2 of our children were born at Cedars-Sinai and Beverly Hills. I love these states. I love these cities, as a consumer, but from a business standpoint, local and state government have made it effectively impossible to do business. And people just can't afford it. They can't do it. And they have to be more cost conscious than ever right now. And Texas and Florida in particular offer tremendous opportunities, to be able to do that. And I think it's just going to increase exponentially. And that's at a macro level. At a micro level, you're watching people leave the urban cores and start to live a little bit more in the suburbs, and seeing this huge reinvigoration of the suburban areas and the close proximity, to downtown. Like we own 3 acres on South First that we partnered with an enormous development company, phenomenal Canadian group to build condos. It's still a little bit, kind of confidential, the nuances of it. But, right at South First, 2209, we're building a spectacular project just outside of the urban core. Another project on South Congress, and we're in Kyle, which we believe to be, arguably from a growth, sustainability standpoint, one of the most exciting cities in the United States. We own 200 acres just off of I-35 that Corrigan developed a master plan for us to build 660 family homes and additional multifamily, and commercial. So the growth opportunity in these areas is so profound because of the value that it's bringing to people. So it's not just this, appraised value, this, that, and the other. I mean, there's real jobs, there's real, value still to be received. And that's why people are coming to these cities.
Yeah, no, again, just like I say, the opportunity, the cost of living, and again, being able to have great paying jobs that you do here in Austin. Again, when as on the residential side for me,
great standard of living, great restaurants, great music, the lakes, the trees. This is not. I mean, all it takes, I tell some of our institutional groups, they get to know us or whatever we're talking, and they beat me up as they do, as they're paid to do, as they should. And I just say, look, come to Austin.
Yeah.
Like, come to Austin. Oh, I've never been to Austin before. Okay, well, respect everything you're saying. Come to Austin, and then let's revisit this discussion. Like, let's put a pin in it, and then come down. We'll talk about it, and it's funny to see wow,
like it's not all cowboys and ranches and cowboy boots and
riding
stuff.
Horses, So great city. Obviously, I'm unbelievably biased, for the city, but this is also where I want to raise, my wife and I want to raise our children. This is where we're building our house. This is where our office is. This is where the bulk of our assets are. So as consumers and as investors, we're all in Austin, Texas.
Nice. With all the explosion of construction and those kind of things, I actually happened to see that you were on the news, I believe it was yesterday, for the crane incident that happened just outside the Mueller development there. I've heard I will hear other people if they're new to Austin from that same standpoint, talk about some of the different construction requirements and different things. That way, do you think that there is, I mean, again, safety is pretty paramount nowadays. This isn't 100 years ago where you could kind of get away with doing whatever you wanted to do. But how do you see the construction safety and the plan for the city of Austin, Travis County and whatnot to be able to absorb all the people that are moving in, do it all safely? And what are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely right. Look, the sustainability is there. The sustainability is because of the jobs and the companies and the sheer amount of land that we have, certainly when you go east, to be able to support that. The thing that I get concerned about in Austin is public transportation. That's the real knock on Austin that, a lot of folks way smarter than me are thinking about. It's something people are very concerned about. There's a lot of proposals to build some underground subways. I think you lost me.
Did for a second. The wonders of live technology. And I can see, but I can't hear you right now.
I guess we had a little good. I think we're back. So back to this point of the knock that you see with public transportation, and folks are looking at that, and you've seen some of the proposals of some of the underground subways and some of the rails, and I'm a huge proponent of that, and I think we need to address those issues in a meaningful way, because, you start getting into affordable housing issues, people are starting to get priced out of the market, certainly Austin Central. And I'm, our family, my mother-in-law, lived at Chevy Chase Apartments up the road. We came from, although my father's family and my mother's family are highly, highly educated, we didn't come from much. We're very blessed to be in this great country. My father was an Iranian immigrant. We worked hard to be here. Okay. I delivered pizzas through college. We're workers. Okay. And so I have a soft place in my heart to make sure that, as we begin to do these things, that make sure we're not forgetting people, in the process. Okay. I mean, you have 37 cranes, in downtown. Obviously, as you mentioned, in near the Mueller district, there was 2 cranes that collided the other day. I was on CBS. I think you saw, interviewing us and asking about it. Thank God, nobody was really, really injured. There was a few little, scrapes and things of that nature. One of the cranesmen was locked up inside the crane for 4 hours. They couldn't get him out, but firefighters were there immediately. I give them all the credit in the world. Police were there. I mean, they responded like this. I mean, and people forget the construction is hard. I mean, there's so many moving parts. There's so many that you're operating at 20, 30 feet in the air, 60 feet below ground. And, they're doing a phenomenal job. And they were trying to, give these developers a lot of shit yesterday. And I'm kind of thinking like, look, in the grand scheme of that kind of risk, although, yes, this was unfortunate, it was the best case scenario for what could have happened. And luckily there was no fatalities or anything of the sort. But this city is growing, as you mentioned, explosively. But the difference is the growth is sustainable. Because the jobs and the companies are coming here. The Gigafactory alone on 2,000 acres is going to bring unbelievable amount of jobs, not to mention all the ancillary companies that support that are going to come and bring their, Apple's 140 acres that won't even fully deliver until 2025. So imagine the job growth that'll happen when all that populace comes from 2025 to 2030. So Austin very much is in what I would argue is the first or the second inning
of it. Yeah.
And you have San Antonio, another major city, 45 miles south, and the convergence of those cities, not to mention you have a Division I university in San Marcos in between Austin and Austin and San Antonio. And then in between San Marcos and Austin, you have Kyle. So there's a lot of excitement for the right reasons is the point. We're like, oh, it's booming, insinuating a bust. And I don't see the bust.
Yeah. No, again, right. The fact, just how quickly, the economy overall, but Austin really only felt a blip when everything first happened again with South by being canceled. It was like, hey, what are we really getting into? But from there, it was like,
you got to give a lot of credit to local government. Yep. Local and state government did a phenomenal job of handling this, especially for a city of our size, the COVID cases that we're talking about. And again, my heart goes out to, the folks who lost family members, and we know several people that lost some of their family members. And, anytime you deal with that type of tragic loss, it's tough. It's hard. But at a macro level, at a statistical level, at a city of our size, last week, there was only 324 deaths from COVID. So in a city of 1 million in the proper, in a city of 2 million in the MSA, 324 people
is a very small.
It's a small number. And I think that's because of the good work that the governments have done and the safeguards that they put in place to be able to make sure that happened. A lot of the other bigger cities didn't see those kinds of numbers. So, it's going to be interesting, but I give them a tremendous amount of credit.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I know we're kind of running out of time, so I don't know if you had any kind of final thoughts or things that you saw through that are happening for you that might be of interest.
Yeah, look, we have a lot of things that we're doing. Obviously, as you know, we're very, very large owners here. We're very bullish on this market. We're closing a bunch of new deals for this next month. And, we're excited about it. And what I want people to really just take is this is a great time. This is such a great time we all know the reasons why it's bad, right? Like we've been we have news fatigue from all the reasons that it's been stressful. We don't need to talk about that. We know them. Our kids are stuck at home. All the things slugging. We're all feeling that. But from a business standpoint, if you're willing to go out there and roll your sleeves up and go do the work, no matter what industry you are in, this is an amazing opportunity for growth and expansion. And I really want to drive that home, that it is there. Be innovative, find ways to exercise at home, work something online, get on your Zoom thing, come out of your comfort zone, learn some new skills, and use this as a growth opportunity. And that's not a pitch. That really is, an opportunity. We've had the great luxury of spending more time with our kids than we've ever been able to. And look, is there times it's a pain in the ass? Absolutely. All parents, we know that, they're crawling up your head, but also those special moments that you get that extra time with them, they're priceless. So I wanted to slightly shift that vantage point over to some of the great things that are also happening during this time.
There's usually multiple ways to look at things, and if you want to take the pessimistic, awful kind of approach, you can. But you say this will be for for families, especially with younger kids and stuff, this is an opportunity that many another family and parents never got a chance to have, and may never get a chance to have.
We
And
certainly didn't. Our parents were out when they were working, and we were at school. And so again, it's, it's not good to only look at the positive and not the negative and ignore it. It's not good to look at the negative and not the positive. So you kind of, and as investors, that's what we do. You balance the risk. We always talk about risk adjusted returns. Like, you're not ignoring it, and you're not saying it doesn't happen and putting the proverbial ostrich
blinders on,
in the sand. But there are also some great things. So I'd like to change the vantage point to focus just a little bit more on some of the great things that are happening, and certainly the excitement around our great city.
Awesome. Well, Ari, I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today, and
for having me.
Hope you have a great day, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.